guiding teams in the right direction. The role of a leader is completed when they succeed to guide their team in the right direction. But it starts with the analysis and evaluation of your team members. This involves a holistic understanding of their personal interests and goals and how they align with your vision. However, you will come across people that will not resonate with your prospects. They may have different views and will not always comply with you. At times, they may have a negative or opposite stand. Such people can often demotivate you and weaken your stand, but you must accept that not everyone will follow, especially if you're in a controversial area like religion, politics, or ethics. Once you have filtered out your true loyal team, you need to ensure that you equip the team with a vast number of skills that can contribute to a common goal. This multifaceted approach will enable you to build a strong and far reached plan. This also includes facilitating growth in a progressive direction. As a leader, it is your duty to coincide personal goals with team goals. Let's say a salesperson is very efficient at his job and you decide that he should be promoted to sales manager. The leader needs to analyze the qualities and interests of the salesperson, alluding to an equally effective sales manager position. And maybe it is the human relation skills that makes him a good salesperson, and they may not be a good boss or supervisor. All these speculations fall under the leader's responsibilities. I learned this when I was working as a life coach. When a home based entrepreneur had approached me, her constant worry was despite her elaborate investments in tools and everything, her work process wasn't seamless. After much analysis, I realized that she was not hiring the right house help for each job. Everyone was doing everything. So it is important to assign relevant tasks to each team individually. Finally, to fuel determination and passion, start with envisioning long term goals. Show them the glory of the success to let them see the reward at the end, then break down these long term goals into short term ones to make it achievable and practical. Help your team understand that short term goals make long term goals, and without the long term goals, the short term goals have no aim. So the bi-directional relation of the two helps strengthens an innovative and growth mindset. And I learned all these not in some book, but from experience. I messed up at many points and made mistakes. But the thing is that for every step I took back, I took two steps forward. No matter how small, celebrate each progress. Chapter 6, Abraham Lincoln. Talking about leadership without mentioning Abraham Lincoln's commendable leadership would be an incomplete conversation. Amongst the finest, if not the top leaders, is Abraham Lincoln, a man with such strong values and morals and determination that deterred even the enemies from giving in. His leadership is the best example of what a leader should look like and how a leader is built, not born. I think it is very important to highlight Lincoln's roots and background. Unlike what we usually assume, leaders are just lucky because they have better resources and exposure. It would be a shame if even in those circumstances they did not outshine. Contrary to belief, Abraham Lincoln best exemplifies the inquisitive and striving nature of a leader. Far from being an aristocrat, Abraham did not even receive any standard education, and to say he became one of the most respectable leaders even after decades is proof enough of his revolutionary ideas and his vision to bring change. Born in Kentucky to parents of undistinguished families, Abraham led his whole life living hand to mouth. If it wasn't hard enough with all the constant shifting and wilderness as their civilization, Abraham lost his mother in the 10th year, in the ripe years of adulthood, his early 20s, and most people accomplish their dreams. Abraham worked hard splitting rails for fences, farming, and keeping stores in low-lying towns. But Abraham's passion and ambition remain unmatched. He did what even the most educated failed to do. Teaching himself how to read, write, and learn, Abraham became well aware of the law, a field that is not only intricate but also controversial. He rose from nothing, not for fame or success, but for what he believed in. And to leave a mark, I really want to highlight that Abraham didn't just wake up with the mission of abolishing slavery, nor did he go big overnight. He started small, maybe even insignificant and unknown for a long time. It's about the growth that Abraham favored and worked his way through. Perseverance and farsightedness. He entered as a Black Hawk war captain, where he showed immense dedication and craftiness. He spent 8 years in Illinois legislature and relentlessly rode the circuit of courts for many years, despite no considerable outbreak and many failures. A law partner once described Abraham: his ambition was a little engine that knew no rest. One of the most prominent traits that Abraham repeatedly exhibited was his will to learn from failures. On many occasions, Lincoln never took failures as dead ends, but as an opportunity to improvise and change course. One such event was his loss against A. Douglas for senator in 1858. Even though he failed the election, he found more time on his hands to enhance his reputation and win the Republican nomination for president in 1860 with a glorious record. Moreover, Abraham's wise decision making is a notable trait that helped him build a community and following that were not only like minded as him, but also loyal and thorough. Abraham was a person who knew how to funnel his sentiments and control them to get through to his audience in the most effective way. Recklessness and rigidity were not qualities of Abraham, despite the strong oppression and pressure to bring about change. Abraham knew that tactful planning and approaches were important to ensure victory. He best portrayed this as a president when he realized the true potential of his people. Despite the popular demand and permanence of George B. McClellan, Lincoln replaced him and appointed Ulysses Grant as general. Lincoln's smart decisions and choice of loyal people surrounding him enabled him to come off as a stronger leader. Even during the onset of the Civil War, it was on Abraham to decide which side to take and what actions were necessary to safeguard the Union and a Constitution. Had he not possessed this quality, he would have not been able to slowly push his way through the layers of politics and aristocracy and get his bills approved. He clearly warned the South in his inaugural address: in your hands, my dissatisfied fellow countrymen, and not in mine is the momentous issue of civil war. The government will not assail you. You have no oath registered in heaven to destroy the government, while I shall have the most solemn one to preserve, protect, and defend it. This flows into his decision to form his cabinet after the Civil War to reform the constitutional landscape of America. Typically, a president would include officials and people that are allies and will agree with them on every point. However, this is a quality of Abraham that was never found again. His cabinet included people that were far from allies. He included people from all walks of life and backgrounds to get opinions, ideas, and feedback from a holistic point of view so that he could deeply understand the state of the country. His ability to be challenged was something that very few leaders have. He didn't take the challenge as defiance, but as another aspect to consider and resolve so that he could be better at what he did and work seamlessly. One such cabinet member was Frederick Douglass, a harsh critic and the first African American in a presidential cabinet. He made him all the more capable of being Abraham's chief supervisor. Nevertheless, Abraham was also inept with strong leadership qualities to diffuse internal conflicts, and despite the varying point of view, he could cultivate a similar value system to align common goals and vision. This was important to ensure that all efforts were towards the main purpose so that the additive and collective actions would result in a more profound and multifaceted solution. Abraham's way of working wasn't a dictatorship. Despite his strong beliefs, he displayed flexibility that revolved around a core value and aim: with malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right. Let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds. This is rooted in his understanding of clear goals and steadfastness, making him a strong leader and visionary who never lost sight of his aim. It was exactly this quality that kept him rooted to himself and helped him bring consistency, reliability, and continuity in all his actions and reforms. Lincoln never let the world forget that. The Civil War involved an even larger issue. This he stated most movingly in dedicating the military cemetery at Gettysburg: that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people shall not perish from the earth. Abraham could maintain the sanctity and individuality of each individual while also learning to align and push people to see through a common filter. This not only let people realize their autonomy, but also helped them pave a path for a better future. Indeed, a true leader is not the one who only shows the way, but has walked that path and will walk with you again if need be. Chapter 7. George Washington. The leadership qualities of George Washington have brought not only the American struggle for independence to reality, but also shaped a developing nation that later emerged as the fastest and the most powerful nation on the world map. Therefore, in my opinion, without discussing the depths of the personality of the founding father of America, it is hard to justify the discussion on leadership, the utmost struggle of George Washington to fight against the mercantile policies of the British colonizers and to stand tall in the time of war opened new doors for the American people. His remarkable quality of taking calculated risks and getting things done without compromising on the quality standards gave him a unique aura. The early life of George Washington. It is significant to understand how he rose to power, what education he received, and what family he belonged to. Contrary to most of his contemporaries, he did not receive formal education. He was born to a farmer family at his family's plantation at Pope's Creek in Westmoor County, Virginia. His father was a planter as well as a county judge. George Washington spent his early life with his family. He received a private education during his early childhood days and had no exposure to school or college. Despite having a limited formal education, his ability to pursue knowledge as a lifelong passion gave him a higher rank. He kept moving forward by applying the tactics of self learning. His drive to read and write made his progress possible. He did the three most important things that polished and revealed a hidden leader within him during his early childhood days. First, when he was just 14 years old, he wrote a copy of 100 Rules of Civility. These were the most popular rules that emerged in France during that time. They helped people to learn basic civil decency. When he rewrote them, he was able to uplift his knowledge of the importance of a good company and the basic decency, which is needed to flourish as a person. This helped him undergo significant development in his character, making him a great leader and reformer in his adulthood. Second, he sought guidance and companionship to propel further, which is why, after the demise of his father and mother, he established close ties with his half brother, Lawrence Washington. His brother had been educated in England. Due to his brother's growing powerful influence, he made his position in a world that was quite distant from him. He collected the experiences that helped him become a part of the Virginia gentry. Third, he understood the importance of good relations with learned and influential people. He established a close bond with the Fairfax family members who helped him teach math and science and morph him into a surveyor. Gradually, with time, he became an essential member of the Fairfax Association. Colonel Fairfax started taking a keen interest in making George Washington stronger in his career. These three things initially helped him in building strong leadership within him. Like many other early Americans, Washington was also trapped in the transatlantic trade of his time, including the trade of enslaved people from Africa. He inherited 10 enslaved people from his father when he was just 11. Afterward, he grew his slaves to 500. Moreover, when he married Martha Dandridge Custis in 1759, she brought around 84 enslaved people as her dowry share. However, with time, especially after the Revolutionary War, George Washington changed his views regarding slaves due to economic and moral concerns. Though he never publicly advocated abolition, he abandoned around 123 slaves of his own will, making him a distinguished leader. George Washington and his revolutionary ideas. George Washington's revolutionary wisdom was visible in his writings, where he wrote he would not settle for a monarch's rule if there were discrimination when he was serving in the British Army during the French and Indian War. He was devastated by the discrimination he faced. He questioned the legitimacy of British rule and the reason behind his low wage, despite having extraordinary military capabilities during his entire service period. He received lower wages than the British soldiers. It was not the only area where he was discriminated against, but when he was promoted from lieutenant to captain and others were promoted to a higher rank, he deeply felt the unfair treatment of the Britishers. It was when he decided to quit the army and join the revolutionary wisdom. George Washington, as a strong military general and a Revolutionary War leader. George Washington proved to be a fearless general who set the bar higher for all the subsequent generals. If he had not been the leader of values, he would never have won the freedom for his people. His supreme ideals and a winning strategy liberated the American people from long years of oppression. As a military general, he prioritized three main things. He said that despite all the time constraints, his ultimate objective in fighting was to win freedom. Secondly, he believed that winning freedom had become necessary to secure the American dream and give up on several intolerable acts he thought it had become necessary to prevent the exploitation of American resources and labor exploitation. Thirdly, he advocated for the Republican ideals that would challenge mercantilism and the colonialist mindset. This demonstrated the insights of a leader which were hidden in him. Later on, when he commanded all the United Continental forces raised to defend American liberty, he emerged as the most genius general and commander in chief of the United Colonies. George Washington, a great leader and a founding father of America, a visionary leader, has deep insights into the future. He had a deep understanding of his responsibilities and action plan with which he brought a significant impact on the lives of others and shaped his ideas into reality. Many notable historians have given him the title of the visionary leader. Despite all the hindrances he encountered, he remained stuck to his goal. He stood tall as a general in the American War for Independence. Not just this, but he succeeded in bringing other Americans on the same page and establishing a culture of independent values. His natural talent for focusing on the configuration of two different things at once exemplified his status. He devised commendable strategies as both the president and the military general. As the president of the Constitutional Convention held in Philadelphia from May 25th to September 17th, 1787, George Washington proved to be a visionary leader. Due to his extraordinary leadership skills, outstanding character, and ideas of constitutionalism, he became a preferable choice for the delegates of the convention, despite having less formal education than many of his contemporaries. He demonstrated his intellectual leadership capacities by becoming a leader of the convention. According to Dr. Glenn A. Phelps, professor of political science at Northern Arizona University, George Washington's writings reveal a clear, thoughtful, and remarkably coherent vision of what he hoped the American Republic would become. His extraordinary leadership capacities forced him to shape clear philosophies and notions that helped give life to American constitutionalism, which became a major reason for the convention's success. It also enabled him to utilize his conversation skills to acquire the delegates' confidence and pave the way forward to establish the world's most inclusive government, set up and recognized democracy. George Washington was elected twice as a president of America. At the time of the independence of America, he had a choice to become an American monarch, yet he preferred becoming a president as he aspired to establish a society based on pure democratic ideals. He was already a famous person in America due to his leadership strength, which he had proved earlier. Moreover, the American people were familiar with his democratic ideals and consistency in his approach, so they anonymously chose him as their leader. Later on, he proved the strength of his futuristic vision for both long and short term goals through his work for establishing a union, strict compliance to the constitutional ideals, and developing a uniquely American character. Another ideal that shaped a great president in him was his work towards establishing a republican government that gained the strong confidence of the public. He did everything in his capacity to empower the people, from the grassroots level by taking industry, commerce, education, and other infrastructure development to new heights, just like every star leader does. George Washington as a man of values. Despite all the things that were in fashion and fitted the preset norms of early American society, he chose what he thought was right for him. He stood against all odds that came along his way. One of the best examples in this regard was his marriage. Having many options for weddings, he preferred marrying a widowed woman, Martha Dandridge Custis, who had two living and two dead children. She was even a few months older than him, yet it did not affect the determination of George Washington toward her, and he continued to seek the unification of two harmonious temperaments for a happy and content life. George Washington as a risk taker. To resolve the issues faced by developing American states, George Washington's Secretary of the Treasury and Alexander Hamilton proposed an excise tax on farmers against which most farmers rebelled. He tried to peacefully resolve the issue by issuing a national proclamation using his leadership qualities. However, he remained committed to his decision to achieve the end goals. This enraged the anger among the big farmer populations and forced them to reject the government's decision. This rejection became a threat to the stability of the nascent United American Society. George Washington, already a risk taker, encouraged himself to lead a militia to stop the rebels. He also went against some of his relatives, who were farmers. However, the threat of raising a militia was enough to scatter most of the protesters and sabotage the Whiskey Rebellion. It gave him further strength as a leader. George Washington, a strong proponent of the power of people. The immediate challenge for George Washington as a president of the United States of America was to build a nation. It was a daunting task to do in a divided society into Republican and Democratic political unions. Still, he balanced quite well among both of them. In this regard, the first thing he did was his efforts to take out his country from a relatively fragile constitution, the Articles of the Confederation, and give it a strong and rigid constitution. He empowered people and established a separate treasury of the state. The darker side of George Washington. Like many other notable leaders, George Washington was not perfect. He was not good at directing the troops and planning the war strategy, but his consistent will, absolute fearlessness and determination helped him do wonders as a commander. He always took challenging risks, which sometimes pushed him backward. Apart from this, he always wanted to protect his social image, so he was never willing to accept money from the people despite the need. Though it was cruel to him, this made him do the selfless struggle that shaped him into the best leader. Thus, overall, he was not a perfect person, but he managed to become an excellent leader by keeping up the ideals of leadership on top. He remained stuck to his ideals of selflessness, confidence, risk taking, and long term vision throughout his life, which made him the most important and influential figure in American history.